All right. So today's video, we are going to talk about the FLIPSLED.
You're going to talk about the FLIPSLED.
I am. He said he was going to jump in. The FLIPSLED, I talked to the owners of the company. It was an implement that we wanted to use to prepare for the 2022 CrossFit Games season. There's things that come out in the past, like Big Bobs for team, pig flips for individuals, that have been out multiple times. And it's really hard to get things that replicate that type of stimulus. FLIPSLED seemed like a good one to do that with, and we'd never had them before. We saw it at Wadapalooza, and we got 2 of them in our preparation for the 2022 season. And in exchange for that, we told them that we would give them programming tips. We would tell our audience how you could better use them, and just give some insight and sample workouts as to how we actually use them in preparation and whether or not it was valuable for us as an organization. I think, to jump to the conclusion of the video, I think they were valuable, and I think that we learned a lot in terms of how to use them properly. So that's what I'm going to share in this workout, in this video.
One of those.
Yeah.
On top of all that shit, I had fun just playing with it, even unloaded, just flipping it, something different to do.
Yeah, I think in CrossFit, especially the way the Open has gone over the course of the last 10 years, is we've done a lot of the same type of strength work. There's been a lot of Olympic lifting, a lot of barbell, decent amount of power lifting. Last couple of years, I'd say maybe since like 2019, there's been a pretty good amount of unilateral stuff with the dumbbell. There are kettlebells in CrossFit, but they don't get used that often, and I think that means that people don't use them that much. And now kind of it seems like strongman and strongman type stuff is becoming a bigger part of the sport. And I think FLIPSLED kind of as a singular implement, like if you're just looking at, hey, I only have a certain amount of space in my gym for a certain amount of things, I think the FLIPSLED is really good in that it provides some really versatile ways to use the same implement. You can push it, you can drag it, you can flip it, you can put multiple people on it.
It's like a bop it.
Yeah, it's a bop it. Flip it.
Bop it.
Yeah, and then you can also change the loading parameter. So if you have a big tire, for example.
Yeah, I was going to say the closest thing we do is tires.
Yeah,
that shit gets, you get dirty.
Yeah, tire flips. You get covered in dirt. They're only the same weight. So if you have a 600-pound tire, if somebody doesn't have the requisite strength to flip a 600-pound tire, then they can't practice on that tire, which means that you need a range of tires. And if you think about just how big tractor tires or truck tires are, you're talking about an unnecessary amount of storage space for that.
Have you ever seen someone have tons of, they had like a section in their gym?
I've seen strongman gyms with
that makes sense. But like CrossFit gyms?
No CrossFit gyms. It's just way too much space. So I think from just a product utility standpoint, the FLIPSLED, if you want to be flipping, which is a good athletic movement that's different than just the straight line linear patterns, if you want to be pushing, dragging, if you want to be integrating partner workouts and team workouts of that type of stuff, or going to the field, I think it's a good implement to have. I know they've gotten a lot of success in the strength and conditioning market. I think they can get more in the CrossFit style market, assuming people have the audience that is actually going to benefit from that type of training and they want to implement that type of training. So it's just a little bit more fun than the standard.
How much does
racing.
It weigh by itself?
By itself, I think the one we have is 260 pounds empty.
And how much can it go total?
You can load 90 pounds on every peg, which means that's another 360, and 240, I think is 400 pounds. No, 500 pounds. Yeah. I think that's right. I don't know. Somebody in the comments of this video can comment on the accuracy of my math, but that gives you a good range. Like what we've seen is, like if you're pushing it with the skids on the bottom, generally speaking,
so it comes with the skids.
Yeah, it comes with the skids on the bottom, and it comes with handles. So there's 4 primary movements I say you could do with the FLIPSLED. The first is that you could take it and you can just flip it as the name intends. So you're just flipping it end over end. The good thing about this FLIPSLED is it has different ways that you can actually do it. It has a low handle. It also has a high handle. And then you also, like a tire, can actually go down to the bottom and just kind of grab the bottom of the FLIPSLED, not on the handles, to get it lifted. Generally speaking, that's not the most efficient way to do it, and people are grabbing the handles and using that to flip it, but that would be number 1, is just flipping it. Then you can put the skids on the bottom and put the things on the top, and you can push it.
Like at Granite Games?
Like at Granite Games, they had it in a test. In training, we've also strapped on a harness and dragged it, like put it on your shoulders and walk forward and drag it, or turn backwards and backwards pull it. That is pretty heavy. Even for a high-level athlete, an empty flip sled, the friction of just the weight doing it and the way that it is, and that's just a difficult thing to move in a metcon
Can you move
setting.
it on like a normal rubber floor, or do you have to have the turf? Because I know we've taken it outside.
Yeah, I think you can put the metal skids on the rubber and move it. You just
It'll be harder.
Harder, and also you got to just be aware that you could potentially affect your floor in the rubber. I think the friction of the plates can.
We didn't do much of that though, right?
Yeah, we took it outside and took it to the field in almost all of our training. So that would be number 3. And the fourth way to do it, which we actually didn't do that much training of, which could potentially be an interesting different stimulus that we do in this off season, is you can put the skids on one side of the flip sled. Then you stand on the other side and you lift the front of the flip sled, so there's only one point of contact on one side of it, and you push it while you're elevating and holding weight up. So that, I think, is
that seems like a football type drill. Yeah.
It is. I think it's a football way to use it. It's for training offensive linemen and training people that are going to have to be driving against other people. I think it could just potentially be a good different way to load something, but based on what we had known of the unknown and unknowable sport, we just figured we'll train the things that we know have come out.
Do you think now you would need clips on the weights for sure, but you think we could do a unintended version where you get 2 people on each side and you flip it sideways instead of long ways?
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't think
you like
so.
roll it?
Yeah. You could probably do that. So we use it a variety of times. I think one of the things I wanted to do that I thought that I could help FLIPSLED is kind of anytime you have a new implement coming into the CrossFit space, generally speaking, a lot of people have never done anything like that. So they don't know the technique. They don't know how to think of the technique. They don't know how to program it. They don't know if their level of athletes are going to be able to do it. So I thought, okay, well, I could share a couple different workouts, how we thought about it, how we did it with the elites, what the difficulties would be. So that's what we're going to do here. I'll talk about just 3 workouts. So the first session that we're going to talk about was actually the first session that we actually had the flip sled to use. And we went out to the field to try to do some investigation as to what are the loading parameters we want to use with this thing? What are the reps? What's the best way to structure the workouts? What type of stimulus are we going to get with this? So that way we can kind of organize it into a training week. So the 2 primary things that we did was, first, we did a 50-yard flip sled for time. What we found after watching people do it, it was kind of the weights that we wanted to choose for that type of a rep scheme were 45 pounds on all the pegs for the guys, which is half of the weight for guys. For a guy, yeah, just Travis. 45 pounds that you could load it per peg, or 25 pounds per peg for the girls. And in that session, I think we just realized like technique matters a lot. So we had this 4-time session, but we realized like, okay, people need to understand for their specific body type and for how they generate power, how to do it technically the same way that you would with a weightlifting movement. Like weightlifting, you got to make sure that your pull is proper, your spine angles are right, you're timing your explosion properly.
Or in this example, it's like a wall ball, because it's like if you're taller, you're going to be, the wall ball is easier.
Closer.
And same with the flip sled, because the flip sled is only one size.
Yes. So it's one size. You get kind of wedged under it, and you need to make sure that it's high enough that it gets to that tipping point. So some people have to straighten their arms at the
as
top.
A tall guy.
Yeah. He kind of gets it up there and just moves it forward. And also just timing the explosion, like lifting it up, exploding, kind of making it like a power clean, moving it forward. So that's kind of the major observation we learned is that you need technical stuff. Then we kind of thought like, okay, well, this is a really good training tool for potentially making our athletes a little bit less run down from a joint perspective leading into a competition. If you just think about what a flip sled is, it's almost like a heavy, powerful implement, or a heavy, powerful movement. So if you were to compare it to something or the stimulus of something, it would almost be like a heavy power clean or lifting up a sandbag and lapping it onto something heavy or getting doing it over a yoke where it's a heavy contraction where it's repeated. The plus sides of this specifically as a tool is it just seems like a little bit less extreme angles on your wrists and on your elbows or on your knees than like a heavy squat clean, for example. So it seemed like a more accessible, repeatable strength style exercise that you could do in training that just might put a little bit less stress on our athletes' bodies. So flipping just in general.
And not to mention that they use that thing at the games.
True.
Almost.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I shouldn't assume any knowledge. Yes, we know in the past that they've had the pig flip. It's part of the reason why we search for the FLIPSLED, because you can't buy the pigs and you can't really replicate that without tires. We have one dirty old tire that gets peed
we just
on.
Eat lunch on.
Yeah, and nobody actually uses it. It's super heavy. It's hard to prescribe. One side is kind of worn down, and it's just really inefficient training, where this came out and it was like, okay, it's a good training stimulus of something that we've already done, easier to implement, structured loading progressions that are easy to do on it. And I think just as a strength training tool, it's just good. It gives you hip extension. It gets some unilateral balance. It kind of gives you a hinge and an explosion without all of the loading being jammed on your front rack or requiring a ton of front rack stuff. So just, it's a good way to train for people, especially in CrossFit, where we like to do anything and everything and do heavy stuff repeatedly. So that was number one that we did in the session. And number two was a empty push into a run. And we actually saw empty pushes come up at Granite Games in a workout. That was actually after I think we did this session.
Yes,
I think
so.
So we, after this session, I lost track of time since it's been so long, but they did the empty flip sled push. And we realized in doing that you can really only push it empty. You can kind of drag it for very short periods of time, but it seemed like people couldn't get enough leverage, and it was just really heavy.
Some
in that
motherfuckers
format.
could.
Yeah, some people could, but it didn't seem like something that they would like, okay, we're going to put this in where a whole competitive field had to do it, because we had
For CrossFit.
semifinal athletes that literally couldn't move it that way.
Right.
So it just didn't seem right, mostly on the women's side, because their body weights are way lighter and they're just a little bit less stronger. So it seemed like empty push is really the only way to use it. And the contraction type that you get from that is very different from like a prowler. Prowler, you get on it, let's say it's empty and light, you're running across the field. Your foot turnover is really fast, and it's essentially like sprinting while pushing something kind of light, or and there's not a huge amount of resistance, which creates a different kind of stress. It almost turns it into feeling like metabolic, like you're doing echo bike sprints or assault bike sprints or actual sprinting, where it feels like pukey and metabolic and acidic. Whereas pushing this is almost like doing sustained strength work. You're under tension the entire time. You're grinding. Your heart rate is high and elevated, and it's still very uncomfortable, but it's not the really fast cadence stuff. And this is just good for training people to just build grit and resilience. Like places where I think that this would have carryover, as an example, would be a 200-meter sandbag carry for time in the Capitol at the end of the workout, after already carrying heavy sandbags for 200 meters. So you're under tension, under so much loading, where your grip is tight and your arms are tight and your body's tight and your core is tight, and you have to keep moving and walking forward. That's a very, very specific type of like strength capacity stimulus. And we found after doing that, like, okay, this is a really good way to kind of train grit and train people to deal with that just high time under tension.
It was brutal to watch them.
Yeah, really
Didn't you
challenging.
trick them at some point at the end where they thought they were done? And
Yeah. That was that session. Yeah. I had them do some try to collect some data. I think I had them do 25 meters for time or 50 meters for time at the end of going through and alternating. And then at the end, I kind of blew it with the first person, but at the end, I was like, okay, this is your last one. Sell out and get as far as you possibly can. I think it was Travis, and he pushed it. And then right afterwards, I was like, all right, you're going again on the next interval, and didn't let the next people in. And then I did that to everyone, but the cat was already out of the bag.
Yeah. I mean, no different than when Dave did it. It's like
That's
once
true.
the first guy went
that's
through,
true.
they were running past the other people.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You're going to do 15 yards for time, so you're going to go to that 30. Then I'm going to push it back for you, and you're going to do that twice.
Okay.
It's going to be max effort, short rest, max effort.
Okay.
Good?
Yep.
All right, so that line where Frank is right now. Stand by. Go.
You got it, Lex.
All right, so that was the first workout that we did with the flip sled on the field. Just to give you, so we use this in training a lot. I'd say we got 2 to 3 sessions per week out. You guys probably saw it on our stories if you follow our Instagram. But the session that we are going to talk about next was something that we did in our games prep camp, where we tried to use the flip sled in a more traditional CrossFit-based capacity, where instead of thinking of it like, hey, this is going to be at North Park, we thought, okay, well, could something like this come out at the Coliseum where they're doing more just classical CrossFit-based stuff and they're flipping the sled up and down inside the Coliseum? So that was kind of the next workout structure, where we did 4-time 15 ring muscle ups, 45 GHD sit-ups, 20 flip sleds, 45 GHD sit-ups, 15 ring muscle ups.
Is this the one where Noah went flying through the rings?
Yes. Do you? Hopefully you have footage
Yeah, I
of
have
that.
that.
God, that was one of the scariest moments of the preparation. And it was on, so just, this isn't helpful for people about flip sled, but to make the story interesting, we go through the whole workout. Travis takes the lead on the flip sled, and Noah is coming back. Travis is a couple reps into his muscle ups. Noah jumps up and does 10 and catches Travis wherever Travis was, jumps back up to try to finish the workout and like get a final victory on a weekend that was relatively tough in terms of performance relative to Travis. Goes up, does 4, goes up for his 5th and fails the turnover, drops down, goes up, and I think his arm flew through the
he's
ring
hanging
down
in the
sideways,
rings,
and he was like, he was like dangling like he was crucified by the rings on literally his last rep.
And he would have won that.
Yeah, and he would have won it by, I think it was like 20 or 30 seconds. I can't remember. Yeah. Anyways, it happened.
So how did the flip sled work out in that workout?
Yeah, so
did it come out how you wanted?
Yeah, it came out how I wanted. I think in terms of, so we put 50 pounds per peg and we did 20 reps. I think one of the things I learned from watching that is that if I were going to make this a separator, I would have made it heavier, or I would have potentially put more flip sleds in throughout the workout. I think 20, Travis, I think was moving it pretty substantially faster than Noah, but I think by the end of it, he was like 3 or 4 ahead of where Noah was over the course of 20. And they both went unbroken ring muscle ups, unbroken GHDs, and kind of started at the same time. I think I would like to see a little bit more loading or a little bit more reps or a little bit more of an opportunity for people to separate on it. I think in the structure of the workout that I put in here, I would say that the muscle ups were the last set of muscle ups were the major separator, and the flip sled wasn't really as much of a variable in dictating the winner or the loser. And in doing that, I think that's like, if I think of the flip sled almost like just replace it with a power clean or replace it with a deadlift. We've had years of experience figuring out how long is it going to take an athlete to do 20 reps if it's a 275 pound power clean, how many can they do a minute. Right now, we're still in the learning process with the flip sled and figuring out how to optimize it and collect data and do it with other things. Like we've done it on the field, but the field poses its own limitations because you can't have a pull-up bar, or we can't. The Zeus rig at the games can, but we can't have pull-ups at the field.
So you're just not as dialed in
to
have it right.
That was kind of, I think, the biggest thing.
It's okay, we forgive you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. So it was a good workout. It was a good race. It was really
fun to watch.
Implement. It was fun to watch. I think it means that this implement, if, I don't know what's going to happen, but if they can develop a good relationship with HQ, I think it can be a good component of the sport moving forward.
Did they sponsor Granite Games, or was it just
I think it was
Games?
One of the sponsors of Granite Games. I talked to them while they were up there, or whoever was running the booth up there. And it seems like they're making a push. And honestly, I think it's a good implement. The sport itself is making a change in terms of how it's testing gymnastics and all of that stuff. Maybe, well, I guess they already did. It's also making a change in how they test strength. So this could just be another strength tool that could potentially come out. But they did use pig this year, and they probably have those pigs, and Rogue.
Rogue just doesn't sell them, though.
Yeah.
They sell these, right?
They sell these, yeah. So I think this is just a good alternative for people. In terms of programming tips, so this is just an example, but I would say that from a loading perspective, if you're talking about a low number of reps in the gym, this is very different than, hey, we're going to flip this thing all the way across the football field. It ends up being a lot of flips. If it's in a metcon, like a 15-12-9 or something like that, I think the loading needs to go almost all the way up to the max. So it's really challenging to move, where people are getting to the point that they can't move it, not thinking of it here where we want the turnover a little bit higher. So for higher level athletes, I would say males for sure, load it pretty close to the max if you're on the lower end of the rep range, and probably like 45 pounds could be like a weight that you would be doing all the way down the field type thing, where you were aggregating a lot of volume of it. So that would be example numero dos. The third thing, which we kind of found as we went, which wasn't really the initial intention, was that this can be a really effective tool to train teams. And we had our team getting ready for the CrossFit Games, and there's an implement at the games. If you're not super familiar with CrossFit, which you probably wouldn't be watching this channel, but if you're not, they call a big bob, where it's essentially like a bob.
It's a big sled.
Yeah, a big
like
sled.
Multi-person sled.
Yeah, multi-person. I think.
And again, they don't sell it.
Yeah, they don't sell it. I think in the past they've had 6-person teams use it. They actually have like a bar, I think, on it because it's so big that you can do like bar muscle ups on the big bob, and there's multiple things to do with it. But really, it's just a really heavy thing. I think it was 1,000-pound push on the field, and it's very hard to replicate. What we did was,
I remember last year the team when we went to field sessions, I can't remember what they did.
They pushed prowlers together.
They made some contraption.
Yeah,
and then this year when they saw the flip sled, they were like, "Wait a minute."
Yeah. So last year we took 2 prowlers. We went together. We strapped a like a moving cable that has a ratchet on it to lock them together, loaded it up, and had the athletes push it. And, you know, it got the stimulus okay, but it wasn't heavy enough to really give that type of a stimulus. When we saw the flip sled, we're like, okay, can only put 90 pounds per peg on it, but they have these handles and these skids. We figured that you could turn the handles sideways, so they almost stick off the side in the same way that you would kind of see somebody pushing a big bob.
Isn't that how they did it at Granite too?
I think. I don't know.
I can't remember.
No. I think the handles were normal at Granite. I can't remember for sure.
We'll have footage so you can see the team.
So you could see what the team did. So we had it loaded up in full. And then also, just based on how that's set up, you can actually just put stuff on top of it to add weight. So I think we had 300 pounds of sandbag plus the fully loaded, which is, I think, 500 pounds. So we had it up to 800 pounds, which really replicated the stimulus of the CrossFit Games and what that experience is like with the actual big bob. So the workout we did, not really relevant other than just showing you a visual of how they did it, and that can give you some ideas of how to do team workouts, how to do partner workouts. If you have individuals that are training that you just want to have some fun and do some stuff together and do some shared suffering, can be alternative way of using it, where you get 4 bodies on each flip sled, which means you can almost run like a class that way. You could have a 16-person class. You have 2 groups of 4 on each flip sled doing something and pushing it, and then the other group doing something else in the environment, and switch. So it gives you a little bit more versatility with the implement if you're using it like in an affiliate or in a class or in a sport performance setting with multiple people. But the workout we did was 200-foot push, which was all the weights plus the 2 150s. Then we did kettlebell push presses for 20 reps for each athlete, then 100-foot sled push, 20 kettlebell push press, then 300-foot drag with the rope. So they hooked the rope up to it and dragged it, which I don't think we have footage of, but you can use your imagination to just picture it, or maybe Chris can make a fake rope dragging it with people. And then it ended with 300-foot farmer's carry. So that workout is really just kind of a replication of some type of a grunty workout that you would see at the CrossFit Games for a team. And it ended up being just great preparation for giving them exposure to the type of stimulus that they would experience with a big bob without having access to the big bob. So
I think I go back to, it's just fun. Just even flipping it. Something about the satisfaction of like when it's tipping and you just get to watch it crash.
And
like,
it's no more weight.
Yeah, you don't really get to do that with like a bar. Like the bar comes down and you can throw it down and get it, whatever.
Yeah.
But that whole like, what? Here it goes.
Yeah. And you get to, I feel guilty slamming a bar. And this, you don't really need to slam. You just have gravity taking it, but there's just the thud to like,
there's something about it
the
that
end of every
it's just
rep.
fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think as a training tool, especially for athletes, if you've been in the game for a while and you've been training for a while, you probably touch a barbell a lot. You'd probably touch dumbbells a lot. You definitely touch rings and a bar. Just being able to do something different, learn something different, figure out the way to do it, figure out how to be efficient, get yourself better, progressively load a new thing and get stronger and try these new movement patterns. It like these little things that come up in training, they kind of breathe life into our training community. I think this year, I obviously as a plug to them, as a thank you to them for giving us them to use and learn. I am a big advocate of them, but also just honestly, they made it just a little bit more enjoyable in the environment this year and gave us a little bit more variance in terms of how we could prepare people properly for the CrossFit Games. So if you got people getting ready for the CrossFit Games, if you got people that want to be ready for the CrossFit Games or doing these big picture competitions, or you just want a way to get a little bit more structured strongman training in, I think the tool is great. I think it's better than tires, prowlers. Prowler provides a little bit of a different stimulus, but you kind of get a prowler and tires and all of this into one implement. Yeah, it's just a little bit more versatile.
You're not going to just be stuck flipping it.
Yeah, so it gives you some positive things to train and get yourself more fit.